What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday we had some news break that Nintendo would be skipping a fairly major event for 2024, which immediately brought up concerns online around what they have for us for the rest of the year, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Apple, who's now responded to that emulator that sort of broke onto the scene officially for their App Store with even a bit more of an explanation as to if other emulators could show up. And then we're also going to be talking about the PlayStation 5 Pro, as it is looking more and more likely with new reports getting out there. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Star Wars Outlaws. Of course, this game is out at the end of August, and it's been mired in controversy all over the internet now, but something that has been very frustrating that we've seen is when content is locked behind, say, special editions or season passes, especially for a single-player game like this, and it appears Ubisoft is going down that path once again. This is posted up over on Insider Gaming, where they say, according to the game's website, the Jabba's Gambit mission requires players to buy either the $109.99 Gold Edition or the $129.99 Ultimate Edition, and that's for a specific mission that's described just as Kay is putting together a crew for the Canto Bight heist. She receives a job from Jabba the Hutt himself. Turns out that ND5 owes Jabba a debt from years ago, and he has come to collect. And I saw a lot of people frustrated online because this seems to be a Jabba the Hutt specific mission, but I don't really know in the game if maybe that's just a character you go to and get missions from consistently, or if this is like Jabba the Hutt's section is locked behind a season pass with the premium editions and that sort of thing. And again, it is frustrating to see that because you'd like to buy the game for now $70 and get the entire thing, you know, with your purchase, but instead we see games really going for much more than that initial sticker price. But we'll get more information for Star Wars Outlaws, of course, as we get closer to release and we get our reviews and find out if Jabba the Hutt is a major part of the game or maybe just part of the season pass DLC. Also, it looks like One Piece Odyssey is making the jump to the Nintendo Switch. This is posted up over on Gamatsu, where they say publisher Bandai Namco and developer Ilka will release One Piece Odyssey Deluxe Edition for Switch on July 25th in Japan and July 26th worldwide. Now, this appears to be a deluxe edition that comes with just extra content, I guess that's already been released, and they're sort of bundling it together. It does say it includes the Reunion of Memories, additional scenario that can be played after clearing the main game, as well as extra outfits for the Straw Hat crew with the traveling outfits and the Sniper King's traveling outfit. So there you go. I mean, obviously it's going to be a full-priced game. This is one that I see marked down from time to time on places like Amazon, but when I go into Walmart or Best Buy, it's still like the full $60 or $70 price now. So fortunately for Bandai, they didn't wait too long to bring this game over to the Switch, to where the other versions of the game on the other platforms are like 10 or 20 bucks, and this just happens to be $60 because it is a late port to the Switch. But if you've been holding out for a One Piece Odyssey to make the jump, looks like it'll be doing that this summer. Oh, and here's some fun retro news. It appears we have another cheat code that's discovered 25 years later. This is on the Nintendo 64. It was posted up over on X. This is posted by Jupiter Climb, and they have a video here kind of showcasing this cheat code in action, but it's new Konami code discovered in Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. You can unlock all characters and costumes from the start. They outline the combination here using the C buttons. It's C up 4 times, C down 4 times, C left twice, C right twice, C left twice again, C right twice again, L, R, and Z. They explain this cheat code saying, while looking into the game's files, Moises discovered the code and Liquid Cat figured out what it actually does, and Moises has found more codes that might have speedrun significance. Stay tuned. So this essentially just unlocks all characters and costumes from the start, which, yeah, it's going to fast track a lot of that, obviously having to go through and unlock those different characters. I think it's just fun to see these cheat codes being discovered decades later after release because, I mean, really, they've been there this entire time. We just never figured it out. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo. skipping Gamescom. Gamescom is a massive, massive trade show that happens in Germany every single year, and there are hundreds of thousands of people that head out there, of course, to meet up at times. Behind the scenes, as we heard last year, Nintendo met with different developers and publishers and apparently showed off at least target specs or target hardware for the next system. That's where we heard about things like the Matrix demo being displayed on this device, along with a first-party title with Breath of the Wild that just eliminated all load times, and it ran at, like, what, 4K? I mean, it sounds impressive at least. We haven't seen any video, obviously, of this, but the fact that Nintendo went out there last year to showcase their new hardware in some way, you feel like they'd be there this year too, right? Well, it looks like Nintendo is actually skipping Gamescom this year, and we'll maybe speculate and talk a bit about why that could be, but we even have a response from Nintendo themselves. Now, we can see this is posted up, and this is where it all started here. This was by Games Workshop. They say Gamescom is a central event in Nintendo's event calendar. It's a Nintendo Europe spokesperson kind of relaying this information to them, saying, "This year, however, after careful consideration, we decided against taking part in Cologne. Instead, players can try out the games for Nintendo Switch as part of other Germany-wide events." And then Eurogamer managed to reach out to Nintendo UK. They also got the response, "Gamescom is a great event, and each year we evaluate whether Nintendo should participate or not. After careful consideration from all perspectives, we made the decision not to be present at Gamescom 2024. Players will have opportunities to try out Nintendo Switch games at other events throughout the year." Now, Gamescom takes place August 21st to August 25th. And we're all kind of figuring Nintendo will be either already had announced their next system, or maybe around this time we get a trailer drop of some kind if we are, again, to believe that this system is targeting maybe first half of 2025. We figure we'll know about the system by the end of this year, unless it's not coming out till holiday 2025, and who knows, at this point, anything's possible. I am still thinking it's first half of 2025, which means this might be around the time that they reveal the thing for the first time, which also means they probably wouldn't have much to go to Gamescom with anyway, because it's in that in-between time period right now, and it costs these companies a lot of money to go out to any of these different events. E3 was, at times, tens of millions of dollars. Gamescom, probably not as expensive as what E3 cost them, but still, it's not free. So that, along with all the logistics around, figure out what games to even showcase there, or which systems to show up with, maybe a Switch and then a Switch 2 if it had been announced. But I think if we are to believe that Nintendo could be showcasing their next system in a trailer or maybe their own event, maybe September or October, somewhere in there, like they did with the original Switch trailer in October, this would be a very weird and awkward time for them to even go out there. What would they really showcase? Probably not much. So while people were looking at this online as kind of like doom and gloom for Nintendo, I'm sort of looking at this as, okay, they clearly have some other stuff planned. Nintendo's not just going away, and they're like, well, we're not going to be around anymore. What do we need to go to Gamescom for? They're probably thinking, okay, we have other stuff we're planning out to start pushing and announcing our next system, but Gamescom doesn't really fit into it at this time, and I wouldn't be shocked if they then return to Gamescom next year with much more to show, as their system would have been on the market, hopefully for like 6 or 7 months by then, and that's at least the hope at this point, so we're not still trying to figure out what their next system is by August of 2025. But that's at least what I'm thinking. I feel like later on this year, if they don't talk about it in June, we'll see some sort of trailer, and then I guess off to the races for the first half of 2025. Hopefully. Next up, let's talk about Apple and emulators that appear to be getting approved, at least for now. One has been, and in fact, when it showed up, which is a Game Boy Advance emulator, it jumped to the top of the charts for apps in the App Store on iOS. People were showing it off on X, on YouTube, Facebook, just like, here's my iPhone, this is completely official through the App Store, here I am playing Pokemon Fire Red or Super Mario Bros. Advance, that sort of thing. Well, Apple caught wind of this, of course. They figured they would know, and they pulled the application down, but not necessarily because it's an emulator and not because it's playing ROMs. In fact, they actually responded to that part of the equation as well. But we can see this is posted up. This is over on Mac Rumors, saying iGBA was a copycat version of developer Riley Tetsu's open source GBA for iOS app with the addition of ads on top. While it did not explicitly name GBA for iOS, Apple told us it removed iGBA from the App Store after learning it was a knockoff app that copied another developer's work and attempted to pass it off as its own. I went over all of this stuff on Sunday, so if you're curious, more information around that, you could check that video out. But they go on to say, notably, Apple confirmed to us that emulators on the App Store are permitted to load ROMs downloaded from the web, so long as the app is emulating retro console games only. Apple also said it had approved iGBA's functionality before learning it was a knockoff app, suggesting that Game Boy emulation is permitted on the App Store, but the company is yet to share any other examples of retro game consoles. See, even that part is still kind of vague. Like, what does Apple consider retro console? Because we already have that conversation all the time. Is it 15 years? Is it 20 years? Could you effectively show up here with, let's just say, an Xbox 360 emulator worked on the iPhone? Could they get that passed through and dropped on the App Store? Because, I mean, the 360 is going to be 19 years old at the end of this year. To me, that feels retro. I know it still has an HDMI port. Sure, technically displays 1080p and stuff, but I mean, it's technically retro, right? So to me, Apple definitely needs to be much more specific around what they consider retro systems at this time. But at this point, it seems like emulators should be able to pass through their approval process, and we're basically going to sit and wait now for the next one that does break onto the scene, and hopefully one that's not as sketchy as this most recent Game Boy Advance emulator where they pulled original work and dropped ads on it. Let's try the original work and see if that one can get through, because if it can, all kinds of emulators are about to show up on the App Store, and that's pretty exciting stuff, obviously, for people who don't necessarily want to go around sideloading, jailbreaking, all that other stuff. If you can just download on the App Store, yeah, it's going to be very popular, and the early emulators that make the jump and get through that approval process are going to be on the top of those download charts, as we saw here with this Game Boy Advance one. So we'll keep an eye out to see if maybe a PS1 emulator drops on, a GameCube emulator. There's a lot of possibilities. We'll see what happens. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro, as we have been getting a lot of information around a system that is not officially announced at this time. We had talked before about Moore's Law is dead, how he had a bunch of information come out. His video also got pulled down seemingly by Sony. I think that happened actually weeks ago, but started to make the rounds again that it had happened. But now the Verge is throwing their hat in the ring with a bunch of information that seems like they got from developer documents as well. But we can sort of go over it here, starting with Sony also using a more powerful ray tracing architecture in the PS5 Pro, where the speed here is up to 3 times better than the regular PS5. In fact, it seems like one of the big focal points here for this Pro system is ray tracing, like just to be able to enable it and utilize it in different ways, because let's face it, there are a few games that use ray tracing on the PS5, but the sacrifice in terms of frame rate, performance, resolution just doesn't really seem worth it to most of us. So if Sony can, I don't want to say make ray tracing quote unquote free, but definitely make it so there's less of a sacrifice on the side of everything else, it'd be really cool to see that utilized much more. Sony will offer developers the ability to pick between a standard mode at 3.5 gigahertz, this being for the CPU, or the high CPU frequency at 3.85. While the lower frequency would be rare, apparently that unused power on the CPU side is sent over to the GPU, so I guess if maybe your game doesn't need that boost for the CPU, you can take advantage of it on the GPU side. Games can use an additional 1.2 gigabytes of system memory on the PS5 Pro. That moves up to 13.7 gigabytes compared to the 12.5 gigabytes allocated to games on the base PS5. We also have some information here around the scaling that they're going to be doing here. Sony says there is around 2 milliseconds of latency, which is something you're probably not really going to notice. And I've realized a lot of people don't even play on game mode on their TV. So yeah, 2 milliseconds, it's not really going to be noticeable, but this is involved in upscaling a 1080p image up to 4K, and Sony is working to support resolutions up to 8K and even improve latency in the future, which I assume would be through different patches for the firmware. And at this time, seems like holiday 2024 is the expected release window, so later on this year, get it out there in time for Christmas, gift-giving season, that sort of thing, for a system that's probably going to cost, I still think, right at the $600 mark. So obviously a luxury item, since you can also just buy the regular PS5 for $100 to $150 less. Yeah, you definitely want to get out there for the holiday season. But this just, I mean, it's going to run alongside the regular PS5. It's seen as mostly an upgrade for resolution, performance, with frame rate, as they are going to have a PS5 Pro enhancement tag that gets put on any game that at least has sizable enhancements, or ones that probably can meet the marketing threshold. And trust me, I see a lot of people online who just go, I don't really care that much about the PS5 Pro. The PS5 is good enough, but I am someone who does like to have, at least in this case for consoles, the Pro version. As last generation, we had the One X, and then we had the PS4 Pro, then the One X introduced, and I actually got quite a bit out of those systems. So yes, I would like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth not to look so blurry. I would like to see ray tracing used in a more meaningful way. I'd just like frame rate to be better if possible in many of these games. So just going straight to PC, if I can have a PS5 Pro box in the entertainment center when I want to play on console, I'll just move up to that. But I get it, most people are probably just going to look for the regular PS5. That's what happened last generation with the PS4. More people settled for the regular system and still enjoyed a lot of their games. I expect that to happen here as well, and the PS5 Pro to mostly be pushed as an enthusiast platform. And in our last bit of news, as we do talk quite a bit about physical media seemingly fading away in favor of the digital era, it is a lot of fun to see these different companies come up with ways to preserve some of these games through ways of physical cartridge releases. And Evercade's been doing that for a while now, with basically they have like a handheld system and like a home console system as well. And they have these cartridges that have collections of older titles that are released. They have really cool like cases that they come in, but in order to do larger games in terms of file size, they're introducing something called the Giga cart. In fact, you can see this over on their website as they work to describe this with you can see kind of the box art and the tag that they'll have for it, saying Giga cart is a new type of cartridge we are making that is designed specifically for larger, more modern retro games, mostly originated released on CD. This new cartridge type will be identical in size and shape to your existing carts, but will internally have a larger capacity to bring you these more demanding games. Now, of course, with these larger cartridges comes a larger price, coming in at $25 for the suggested retail price, up from $20. Now, this means having more of these games on one cart will have a better value for you than breaking a game list down over multiple cartridges. So if you look at, for example, their releases here, that's basically what they do. They have collections on all these different cartridges. You pop them into your Evercade system, and you can just kind of go through, pick them, and play and all that. So, I mean, it's a fun idea, sure, and I understand many people out there will be like, I'll just get a Miu Mini Plus or some sort of emulation handheld, and I'll just play the ROMs and that sort of thing, and that is fine. But in this case, it is something fun to collect, and a lot of the cartridges and experiences on there are actually fairly high quality. So I like the idea of them at least going in the direction of, hey, we'd like to get some of these CD-based releases onto these cartridges, and we're going to go the way of the Giga cart rather than just go to all digital and I guess release over the air. They obviously were at a kind of a crossroads here, and they had to figure out which way they were going to go. And I guess they chose physical media. So I am curious how this will work out. I've talked about getting an Evercade and trying it out, and maybe we'll do that at some point on the channel here in a tech wave and really see what these Giga carts are all about when they do start releasing them later on. And before we go to the comments of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, are you expecting Nintendo to have a big new holiday title for 2024? And if so, which one in the comments? So 67% of people are just like, no, like writing this holiday off. 33% say yes. And I was looking down through the comments. A lot of people think it could be, say, the Zelda collection with like a Wind Waker Twilight Princess bundle. I mean, that could be fun to have. I don't know if that's considered a quote-unquote new big release, but I would like to see Wind Waker on the current Switch. I do think that Metroid Prime 4 is coming out this holiday season. It's just kind of a feeling at this time. Also, it's been a long time since they originally announced it. It's also been a long time since they announced that they were rebooting the entire development of it. So that's sort of what my money is on now, but who knows? Nintendo could have some surprises that just out of nowhere, here's this big title, and yeah, it's coming out in 3 or 4 months. They've done that multiple times in the Switch generation, so I wouldn't be shocked if maybe June, when they do some sort of showcase there to set up the rest of this year and into next year, they drop something really big. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day. We can see this one posted up. This is from Danis, who says, when is the last time Square Enix said sales are up to expectations? Did they ever say it? You know, I had to look, and it's been a while. I feel like Tactics Ogre Reborn probably was okay with them. I mean, it's a release that I don't think they were expecting to sell millions and millions of copies, but seemed to do pretty well for its debut, and they really haven't mentioned much of it since then. Final Fantasy 16, they said, or at least the developers said, that it seemed like it had reached a younger audience, which I think right now is a big initiative by Square Enix to just get some of the newer generation of gamers who are coming in who don't have that familiarity with Final Fantasy on board for whenever Final Fantasy 17 comes out, because while 7, that entire, at this point, franchise, what Final Fantasy 7 has become, is very nostalgic for myself and many others. I mean, the younger generation just doesn't have that feeling around 7, and it's kind of showing, I think, in some of the sales around Remake and Rebirth, but Square Enix seem to have high expectations all the time, so hopefully one day they find something that lives up to it. And then we'll finish up with a comment from the members video. This is from Jimmy, who says, the biggest reason I haven't bought Rebirth yet is because it's the worst kept secret that it's coming to PC. My preferred platform. Yeah, at this time, PC continues to grow more and more in terms of just user base for a lot of these games. And it wouldn't shock me if there's many people out there who kind of see the conflict when it comes to choosing your performance or graphics mode on the PS5, and there's no great way to play the game necessarily because the graphics mode is 30 frames per second. The performance mode, yes, 60. Looks kind of blurry, but if you have a PC, you just gotta sit back and wait a bit, and eventually, yeah, it'll show up. And maybe it'll even be Steam Deck verified. You can play it in handheld mode there, and it's get kind of the best of both worlds at that time. But that is another big thing. Square Enix obviously taking the money from Sony that I guess evens it out for them, but with that delayed release, they'll get another shot at it at some point with Rebirth coming to PC, so we'll have to wait and see how that one goes. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Nintendo skipping Gamescom? Are you a bit surprised to hear that, or do you think they have some other plans in mind, maybe around that time period? And then also, what about this Game Boy Advance emulator getting pulled down off of the App Store, but Apple seeming to leave the door open for other emulators down the road? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.